back to what you were saying earlier. So, is it safe to assume what you're saying is that we are a grafted people? So this is why we can't, even if we do understand certain things, we simply can't get out of our rut, so to speak, to understand that our captivity, our subjugation, and horrific treatment was at the hands or in the name of Jesus. Is that accurate?
Nope. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It's all about the money. All about the money. The reason I feel, I can't say for sure, but I feel, knowing the history of the Negroes, the blacks that became slaves, the reason we are not on the same page as the Jews are in standing together as one is because we have been taught through the breaking down and building back up from the slave owners not to trust each other, to distrust the light-skinned African American or black from the darker-skinned black, because the lighter-skinned black was thought to be more better than the darker-skinned black because they worked in the house as butlers and cooks and house people, because they were more privileged, because you know that they were half white because of the old guy going back there having, babies with the slave woman who didn't have control over her kids. They were property. So we didn't even own our own children because we didn't even own ourselves. So, and then the darker race were the field people, picking the cotton, doing the tobacco, and everything else. Not bright, not educated, thought to be a little bit better than a monkey, or in some cases, according to some of the slave owners, no better than a monkey or a horse. We were not considered human beings. We were considered no better than an animal. We were property. We were not people. And so, through the years, one shade of our people was suspicious of the other shade. We were taught that person is no better than the next person. And that lives on through generations, and it still exists today. If the light-skinned person is thought to be better than the darker-colored person, because the lighter-skinned person may or may not have a better grade of hair, whereas a darker-skinned person has still the African type of hair. That exists, and in the own families, in some own families, darker skinned members may have been made fun of by their own sisters and brothers, or the lighter skinned people may have been made fun of if there was the majority of the kids were darker and one was lighter. How were you treated in your family being lighter than some of the others?
At times I was mistreated. I was called white boy.
See, it exists. It exists. For me, I was the darkest in my family. And so I'm 73, and in my head today, I still hear, "You too dark to wear that color." Like if I go to the store to buy something, my grandmother's words were, "You too dark to wear that color." And then it was always black went with the word ugly together. You know what I'm saying? So it was hard for me. I think John and I had been married about maybe 4 or 5 years, and it was Mother's Day, and he had bought me a red dress because we were going out to dinner. And I told him, "Oh, I can't wear that. People my color don't wear, red." I'm too dark to wear red. And he was darker than me, but I was darker than all the other people in my family, so I'm black, and he said, no, you look good in it, and most of the clothes that I wore that were that had color in them, was from him going out and buying me he had very good taste in clothes, and he would buy me the outfits, and I had to admit, I did really look good in it, but I wore the subdued, dull colors that my mom put me in, that my grandmother used to tell my mom, you can't put that baby in that color, she's too dark for that, that don't look good on her. And my middle sister, she was lighter than you. And then my other sisters and brothers, they were various shades of brown. I was the darkest, she was the lightest, and the other three were the different shades of brown. And I have to admit, I was talked about and made to feel less than. And my middle sister, who was light-skinned, we all teased her. We told her she wasn't in the family. Mama found her on the porch. She was adopted. Because she was light. And then when James Brown came out with that song, I'm Black and I'm Proud, we told her she couldn't be proud because she wasn't black. She was yellow. Because the term my grandmother used was, you yellow so-and-so. She didn't call people like she was yellow. And my grandmother she had a lot of white in her. But she was African-American, but she very, very, very light-skinned, very. And so she put that in our head. And that had to have been put in her head to be put in my mom's head. So it just went down from generation to generation. I stopped it at my child. I just wasn't going to let those old things continue. But my sister, who is 71, and she's still light-skinned, she looks a lot like my grandmother now that she's older. But every year she's out in the sun in her bathing suit and tries to get dark. And it's just not going to happen. She even married a dark-skinned man, 2 dark-skinned men. So she's been married twice and had 3 children because she wanted brown-skinned children, and they're all light-skinned, like her, not like their daddy. I mean, it is what it is. It's in the genes, and we just have to learn. I've learned as I gotten older, it's not about the color, it's about the blood, which is all red underneath the skin. And we're all sisters, we're all brothers, we're all related. And it's not about what color the skin is. And at some point we got to learn to let that go. But it's hard for some people who've been brought up that way, and that's what they hear in their head.
That is a very interesting story right there. I want to shift a little bit to ask you a different question based on something you said earlier. You said you would prefer to be called black versus African American. Now, from historically, I would consider black in the context, being objective about it, as more so of a position versus a color. That I could be incorrect, but the evidence.
What do you mean by position? I need to know what your understanding position is.
Okay. There are currently, there are only 2 groups within America who are classified by a color, and that is white and black. And when you look up these colors, these are diametrically opposing colors, opposites.
Exactly.
And so when I look at the hierarchy of then and now, it seems like white on top, black on the bottom, everything else in between.
Yeah, it's either yellow, brown, because and red. The Native American, even though they're not red, years ago they had like reddish undertones in their skin, so that's why the white people call them red skin. And the Asian people got more of a yellowish tone, so they were considered the yellow people, but they're really Asian or Pan-Asian. The Latinos and the Indians from India, Pakistan, India, stuff like that, they call themselves brown because they're neither, darker like we are. So I guess I hadn't really, until you just mentioned, I hadn't really thought about the color being considered a race when it really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like the term African American because I'm not from Africa. If I were born in Africa and came here and became an American, or if my parents were first generation Africans, then you can say I'm an African American. But years before I considered myself black, I was just an American. I was an American, born, raised here, generations far removed from the continent of Africa. You see, I mean, if you're going to talk nationality, I'm an American. So, but when you look at the boxes and questionnaires and government papers and things like that, they give a color, or they give an African American. They don't just say,
American.
Yes, exactly.
Only
and with the whites, they give it a name, Caucasian. So how come we can't have a name? Years ago, we were called Negroes, but that was derivative from the word nigger, which is what the black people, slave owners, could not say Negro, so because Negro is Spanish for black.
Correct.
And so because they could not say the, Spanish word, they just called us nigger. They shortened it and just said nigger. And to me that was just too close, and our people are still calling each other that, which I definitely hate, because that's a slave name. And they're embracing it. You're embracing a slave name. Or not a slave name, but a slave terminology.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because this ties into what I'm going to ask you now. How you said that nigger or nigga is a derivative, have slave connotations, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, my question is, black being a position more so than a color, because when I look at you, and I do remember your complexion, you don't look black, but you are classified as black by who control America, which would be white people. The connotations are pretty much the same. If you black means nigger, nigger means black, but it can only it seems like people start to differentiate it to make it their own. It's kind of like you're saying something like, well, to me, bad means good and good means bad. Not what it is. It's kind of like self-delusion.
What you want it to be.
Exactly. Versus what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, in my opinion, black is the same thing as being called a nigger. What do you think about that?
I hadn't until you mentioned it. I had not thought about it until you mentioned it. Now I don't think I like it so much.
just trying to follow the logic. I'm trying to be objective about this.
I know. Yeah, but now what am I going to call myself?
Exactly. Yeah.
I would just rather be plain or Pauline. When you get the legal forms, you got to check the box. There's nothing there in that box.
Exactly.
And I hate that, because I've got I've got so many relatives in my family that are going to have a problem. My grandson, my youngest grandson, 16.
Mm-hmm.
And his mom's Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad, Negro, black, whatever you want to call us now. But he's my son, okay? So, have you saw, I just recently changed the cover on my Facebook page. Have you been in to see it lately?
No, I can look at it and you can continue to speak.
Okay. Picture of my son and my oldest grandson. And my oldest grandson is a little chocolate child. Always been chocolate. I mean, that's him. Love him to death. He's 33 years old. Been in the Marines for 10 years. Going on 11 now. But he is married to a Filipino woman. And they're trying to get pregnant. And he has got a problem with what label people are going to be giving his child. And my youngest grandson, mom is white. Of course, my son is, black. And he is not African American because he's not American. He's Canadian and part American. Well, let me put it. His nationality, his country of origin is Canadian. And his mom, she doesn't really put anything down in that box because, you see, her grandmother was French on her mom's side. On her dad's side, they were just Canadians all the way back to and they're white. So, again, he's got African-American blood in him. He's got regular standard Canadian blood that probably, if you check back into their genes, they may have come over from Ireland or Scotland or England or someplace and settled in the country of Canada. And then you've got our blood, And he probably don't know, he has a problem with identification, which I can't say that I blame him because that's the mixed race there, that's in him. So when we're all together as family members, we don't refer to race, we don't refer to color, we just refer to the blood. This is my brother, this is my sister, this is my niece, my nephew, my child, and things like that. So that really is a problem in not only my immediate family, but nowadays there are a lot of people that have that same issue going on. So, what do you call them? And what do they call themselves? I know that PJ, we call him PJ because he's a junior, is for short for Paul Jr., but he's, right now, his skin color is light, and he looks African American, but he's living with his mom, his older brother who is totally white. His older brother's 29, and his younger brother, and all of his Canadian relatives. And while his skin tone is dark, he identifies as white. That's all he knows when he's there. And he's over here visiting us. It's hard for him to, I don't want to say be black, but you know how if you're raised in the hood with the people and act, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
He can't be that way because he doesn't know it. And his younger sister, who lives in Chicago, when she comes here for hours, she teases him about, how come you can't act like the rest of us? Well, because he wasn't raised that way. You know, you're from Chicago, you're from the South Side, you're from the hood, hey, you got all that stuff going on, you know. That wasn't his, that's not his life. That's not his history. So, it makes me stop and think we've got a lot of our people in the U.S. and around the country now that are having those same, don't want to say issues, don't want to really call them problems, but those same things that are happening to them because of the fact that they have come from a multicultural family, a racial family, and depending upon which race and neighborhood they lived in, what culture they're from, that's who they're probably going to identify with, regardless of what color their skin is. Because he speaks French fluently. Because he's being raised by his mom and his grandmother and his aunts and cousins and everybody over there in Canada. He comes here quite often, but that's just for a visit, a weekend, sometime for summer. Between Christmas and New Year's, he's here for a whole week. But basically, that's his life there, as he knows it. So I find that I don't want to say a problem, but a dilemma, so to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
And it made me just think about there are a lot of people in that same situation. So we can't really lump some things into a category or say, you know, with all generality that this is the way it is or it's not. There's a lot of exceptions out there. And I think some of those exceptions are becoming the rule. Look at these rich celebrities that are adopting children from other countries as infants and raising them to be their own child, and they're from anywhere from Africa to other countries, and they're not really, you know, but they're raised in a white environment. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt for one. You know?
If I was I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
If I was to chime in on that right there, just to, like I said, keep it in context, I would say that there are two ways that people can go about that situation. And these are the only ways that I see people going about it. They'll either self-identify, which really has nothing to do with the outside world as a whole, or they're going to be classified by the people who are in power to control what they are classified as. And I would say even the people who don't know, you know, like you said, the mother is French and she has a mixed child or mulatto, whatever the term is used today. That child, whether female or male, will be classified as a black child.
Yeah, I think if they got one drop of black blood in them back in the day, they would be considered black. And back in slave days, the name was mulatto. I kind of like that name. It's French, but it did, you know, say, you know, that you've got white parents and black parents. You know, so it did let you know that. But they don't use that term anymore. It's kind of like, I guess because it was identified with slave days, they just didn't use it anymore.
Correct.
But to me, it was more accurate than some of the terms that they're trying to throw out there. So I you know, it's just, I don't know. I try not to think about it too much and just take it each day as it is. I didn't give it too much thought and consideration until, my grandkids started. Well, actually, even before my grandkids, when I divorced my first husband and before I even met or married John, my first husband married a white lady, and so my son would come home. Remember, he had his visitation rights over there, and he'd go visit his dad, and he was still young. He couldn't understand why they looked different from him, because he had, like, I was ex-wife number 2. So he had met his sisters and brothers from Chicago who looked like him, all black, because ex-wife number 1 was black. So ex-wife number 2 was white. So as a young child, he was confused about why some of his sisters and brothers didn't look like him, and the others did. So trying to explain that to a 6-year-old was kind of hard for me. As he grew older, he understood, but at that particular time, those are some of the things that, pop up that make you go, okay, this is complicated, And as the kids got, his 3 sisters and the younger sisters and brothers, they were raised in a black neighborhood, so they identify with black, even though they're light skin, and they do look black. Just light-skinned black people, but they identify with black. They don't identify with their white part at all, from their cousins and uncles and aunts and things like that. Mm-hmm. They even talk black and everything. But, and even their mom, even though she was white, she used to tick me out that every time I'd be in her presence, she sounded more black than any of the black people that I knew. And it's like, okay, that's not how you were raised, so why are you trying to be black just because you were a black man? You're going to change your language and your mannerisms and even get that black tonality in her voice. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whereas my grandson's mom, she's white, she is who she is, she talks like she talks, there's nothing black in her. Well, I'm not saying that, I don't mean that she don't try to be black because she was with the black. So, I don't know. I'm rambling on.
I wholeheartedly understand.
You're bringing up memories and making me go there.
I understand. I totally understand. In closing, I just have one more question for you. See if you can give me an answer. If not, that's fine as well. Blackness, being black, right? Like I said, I could be wrong, but I see it more so as a position versus a color and a title. Okay, so I'll preface it by saying this. Preface the question by saying this. If you're a police officer, which is a title, you have a certain function that you do. If you're a basketball player, which is a title, there's a certain function that you do. So in the context of how I'm saying that, I see blackness as a position and a title. In your opinion, what does a black person do?
I can't really answer that for you because I don't see black as a title that way. Because it's not, to me, it's not what you do. The title that they put on is who you are, not what you're doing. So therefore, I can't see it as a title of doing something. They've thrown that title on it and then commingled it with the color instead of saying what the race is, they've confused the whole issue.
I suspect it's confusion from the Jump Street.
Pardon me?
I suspect it's meant to cause confusion from Jump Street, but continue.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, if a person were, we can call them white, but they also have the proper title of being Caucasian, which is a color, but not a position or what they're doing. See what I'm saying? So, and a Latino is the language that they speak or the country that they've come from, which is usually a Latin American country, or from Spain because they're speaking the Latin language. And most of the other people, if they say Indian, it can be from India, because the ones that live here, they differentiate the Indians from India as to calling the people here Native American. Over in Australia, they're Australians. They're from British, or the Scottish, or the Italian. Why are we blacks? How come we can't be American?
I'm definitely not suited to answer that question. There are other people.
You see, they've tried, what I'm trying to say is they're trying to put the color with a race rather than with the nationality. And all those other boxes and all those other sayings are based on a nationality. Just think about that. It's based on your nationality. When they look in there, they say, what's your nationality? Are you Scottish, English, from Great Britain, Italian, Greek, Turkish, African? So, that's what I'm saying. How come we got to be black? How come we can't be an American? The only time that, and I traveled to many, many foreign countries, the only time that I have been called an American is when I'm out of my own country and they recognize me as being American and not by a color. It's only back here that they want to refer to me as a color and try to say that black is a race rather than my nationality.
I guess when I asked my question, I was more so referring to some of the things you said earlier when you said there was a white woman that's a part of your family, or a couple of them. One takes on the mannerisms of white culture. She doesn't pretend to be
my grandson. My grandson's mother, she is who she is. She is white.
Correct.
She's totally, she's white. Cool. And she's her grandmother was French Canadian on her mom's side. Her grandmother on the father's side was, Canadian, wasn't from France. Because that grandmother lived up in Montreal. She spoke French and very little English. Because up there in Montreal, that part of Canada is separate but different. And they have been trying for years to succeed from the other part of Canada because that part was founded by the French. And they proudly kept their language. In fact, have you ever been to Canada?
Yes.
Okay, now you'll notice everything is in two languages there. French and English.
Correct.
Because that's how they speak it, because that country speaks French and English. And some of the older people up in Montreal and that area up there in Canada, because it's not in Montreal, that's the biggest city there, but in that area up there, they don't even speak English. They stubbornly stick to their French. So, Darlene wanted to make sure that PJ spoke both languages in honor of all of his cultures. You know, in fact, you may have seen her picture on Facebook. She's Darlene Dubélé. Can't pronounce the last name. Is Dubélé. And she talks about the football, you know, taking the boys to their football games.
Yes.
And she shows the picture so you may see PJ in his football uniform. He's been playing football since he was young. He's 16 now, and he's darn good at it. They had some scouts out that was looking at it. Might be able to get a scholarship into, you know, high school. But he's already in high school, but into college if he's really good. But yeah, she's my, I call her my daughter-in-law, even though she and my son were never married. But she's, you know, really still great relationships with her and my grandson. So that is, you know, she's her, I guess I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, in other words, like, if you married another person from another culture or country, you would only be you because that's who you are. You wouldn't want, I'm going to make an assumption that you wouldn't be, say if you married a person from Jamaica, you wouldn't all of a sudden try to be Jamaican, speaking the language and everything, you know, cooking the food. Well, you probably cook the food, but Jamaican has some good food. but you know, you still would be who you are, and not take on that particular culture. You'll be a part of it because that's who your mate is. But basically, you're still who you are. Yeah, am I making sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's kind of, you know, how my head goes. And she immediately she talked more blacker than me and everybody else in the family. And I was like, oh, look, is that a black woman? Oh, she's white. You know, but, yeah, that was, I'm a little bitter, okay, when it comes to her and him, because he cheated on me with her, and that's why I divorced him. So I don't have happy feelings about her.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was talking about, how you were saying that this Caucasian or white woman was acting black, more black than black people. That's why I asked the question. You know, what are some things that black people do?
We have our own language. And there's a tonality in some of our voices, especially those that may have come from the South or had. Even if they didn't come from the South, if their parents or grandparents were raised in the South and they were around them, they took on that Southern accent, the way they may pronounce certain words. Okay, for instance, when John and I lived over on Scopel in Detroit, there was a man that lived next door to us, and he was from the South, children born here. But John used to egg him on. Not egg him on, he would just purposely ask him a question because he wanted to hear his answer. And the man's name was Mr. Daniel. Nice man, him and his wife and kids. But John would ask him, what you gonna do tomorrow, Mr. Daniels? Well, it would be like a Saturday. And Mr. Daniels' answer would always be, I'm going to church. I'm going to sing in the choir. Not, I'm going to church and sing in the choir. He was from the South, and that's how they pronounced it. And his children, born and raised up here in the North, still had the Southern accent. Because that's what they heard in their home every day. And they sound like they were still born and raised in the South. But John loved to hear Mr. Daniel say, going to church, I'm going to sing in the choir. And then he'd smile, turn away from the fence, come back in the house and bust out laughing, go, John, you know you ain't right. You shouldn't do that. I just like to hear it. I said, but that's not right. You're making fun of him and he don't even know it. You know, but yeah, if you notice some of the people that have old Southern accents because they were raised in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, you know, somewhere in that area, North Carolina. Do you listen to Steve Harvey?
Yes, I've heard him before.
Steve Harvey has a Southern accent. He's from North Carolina. His parents are from North Carolina, even though in later years, he was raised in Cleveland. But he started out in North Carolina, and he had grandparents. He still has that Southern tone. He works at speaking Northern English, but every now and then, the dialect comes out. And you still hear that Southern part. I got used to listening to people's dialects from traveling all over the world, and here in the United States, depending on whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, North, or South, our dialect is all different. Southern people sound different from the Midwestern. We have a Midwestern accent. We don't think we do, but when I go up, you know, to New England, and they say, you've got an accent, you sound funny. I'm going like, you sound funny. That's the people in Boston, Massachusetts, and up there in New York. You know, they've got that accent there. Or California, or down south, or like in the state of Washington. So different people have different dialects depending on what groups of settlers settled in that area and took their accents with them when they came from whatever countries they must have, you know, come from. Like the people up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Now you know a hillbilly accent when you hear it. Bam, twang. Don't care if it's Oklahoma, the Blue Smoky Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, or the Smoky Mountains, or whatever. You know a hillbilly accent when you hear it. Am I right?
Well, yes, you are right.
Texas got its own accent. So you can kind of, you know, figure out, okay, what part of the nation are you from, you know? And then you can almost guess. But that, and who's to say which is the right way and the wrong way? That's just the way it is, because the settlers, as they went across the nation, setting up new territories, whatever country they came from, they have that language, and then they're learning the English that the first pilgrims that came over from England are speaking, and then you've got a dialect that's going on there, you know? So that's generally how it is.
Okay. Well, I definitely appreciate your wisdom, you know, talking to you, gaining some of your understanding. Probably going to get ready to go to the plantation tomorrow, so.
I gotta go to, I gotta be there at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. So,
well, at least the old master ain't cracking the whip anymore.
Right. Then took his foot off our neck a little bit. Okay. I appreciate your time, though. I will contact you again. Thanks for speaking with me.